Hello, welcome back to another instructional video by the Affordable Mechanic. My name is Roy, and today I'm working on a 2009 Chevy Silverado. This truck has been sitting for a little bit. It hasn't been started in about 2 years. First off, I'm going to be replacing the battery and going to do an overall inspection of the truck, see what it needs to pass inspection. Just going to bring you along with me. This is a diagnostic episode, and this is just a way to show what I do to find out what a problem is. First off, I'm going to be replacing the battery. Not well you can see it, but there's the battery. First thing we need to do is remove this brace. Got a 13 millimeter. Anytime if you ever want to set bolts on top of the cow, be sure that there's not a hole. I've dropped many bolts deep into the cow, and you gotta take apart a lot of stuff to get back to them. Alright, there's the brace. I'm gonna switch to a 10 millimeter and do the cables. Anytime you're doing anything with a battery, you always want to have the negative come off first and go on last. Negative off, positive off. Just kind of get them out of the way. We're going to take this brace out. This bolt. Extension. Go. There's that little wedge, holds the battery down. A little bit of muscle. There we go. This one, the customer provided the battery, and he gave me this battery installation kit. So I don't always put these on, but since he gave this to me, I'll go ahead and put it on. What this kit is some battery grease, supposed to prevent corrosion. I've seen batteries with grease on them still corrode, so I don't know how effective it is. And then these little pads here, this is something else that's supposed to help prevent corrosion. But once again, I've seen corrosion build up all around these pads and the grease, so I don't know how effective they are, but they sell them. He purchased it, so I'm going to install it. Set the battery on the battery tray. There's a ridge on one side. Press it up against that ridge, and then you put your wedge back in place. Just gotta find the hole. Insert joke here. Put this back in reverse the way we took it apart. Never fails. Always drop a tool. I've said this in my last video. Always have a magnet. Quick tip, and may be obvious for some people, but not everyone. Anytime you're putting on a brace or anything that's got multiple bolts, never tighten them all the way until you have all the bolts in place and started. And always start it with a good few turns. You want to get as many threads started as possible before you run it in with any kind of power tool. They'll keep you from stripping out bolts and breaking them and prevent a lot of headache. I just remembered, I didn't put this on. I did mention that I don't always do these. First we have these little pads. This is how I like to put them on. I don't know if it's the standardized way, but red is for positive, green for negative. Just going to set that over the posts. Take the cable. I squeeze a little grease on the edge there, and then I stick that on the post. If you're using a power tool with this that's got a variable trigger, just push it a little bit. This puts out enough torque, it will snap these. Gotta be very careful. If you're not comfortable with that, just do it by hand. Last, go. Now, I don't know how long ago he bought this battery, but I'm going to check, see if it actually has enough power to start the engine. I have a little voltmeter here, and I'm reading 12.48 volts. So yes, that's plenty of power to start the engine. As I mentioned, this truck has been sitting 2 years. Before I start anything, I'm going to look over everything. First, check the engine oil. Look at it in the sunlight, see if there's any sparkles. I wipe it and I do it again. Level's good. I don't see any sparklies, and it also doesn't look cloudy. Sparkles would be metal, but you don't want that. Cloudy would mean there's water or other contaminants in it. Next, pop this engine cover off. Okay. So what I look for when I pop the engine cover, something I know has been sitting, is make sure nothing has tried to move in. The main concern is acorns, nut shells, insulation, droppings, urine, but it doesn't look like that other than a few spiders. I don't think anything's been living in here. Now I'm going to grab a flashlight. I'm going to check out the belt. When you inspect the belt, what you want to do is find an area where the ribs of the belt are showing, going over the top of the pulley, in this case the water pump. And you're looking for the little cracks, which I'm not seeing any. Say this belt is good, and keep going. Realize that I had the camera pointing the wrong angle and popped that engine cover off. But just to show you, you have these little studs here. Then you have clips in the back. And so it slides into the back there and then snaps over these studs here and here. Check the oil. It looks good. We check the belt. You notice there's been some dust on it. Looks pretty good. Next we wanted to check coolant. The coolant level is low, but there is some. Last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to check the freeze point of the antifreeze. It doesn't look contaminated. You see here, it says -10 degrees Fahrenheit, -23 degrees Celsius before this freezes. This tells me that the chances of this freezing is slim to none. That tells me that the coolant in the engine wouldn't have frozen and wouldn't have damaged anything internally. The oil is good and a good level. The belt is good. The coolant is good. So at this point, I feel pretty good of trying to start this engine. Without further to do, I just realized there is something further to do. I'm going to scan it. Under the dash here, you see the pedals. There's your OBD2 port, and that's what we're going to plug into. Just like that. This scanner will beep once it's connected. There it goes. Okay, I have this plugged in. This is the diagnostics menu. We're gonna detect the VIN, auto detect. Should take it just a few seconds. There it goes. There's the VIN. We have a Silverado. I'm gonna say we have a 6-speed. It is a V8. It's a Texas edition. It does have automatic HVAC. If I can get it to focus. Not really. But it says 6,800 pounds. So we're under 8,600 gross vehicle weight. Leveling system. This does not have a leveling system. This has vehicle stability. There. Yes. Alright, we're just going to scan everything. So far, nothing major. Not regarding the engine. So that's good. Let's just take a look at what these faults are. I'm going to read the codes. Low brake fluid. Alright, we'll check that. Alright, let's see what it's usually airbags. Passenger presence module erratic. Passenger presence module invalid. So that usually means there's a sensor in the passenger seat that tells the car if there's someone in the passenger seat, so it will activate the passenger airbag. So if that's not reading right, that could potentially be a problem. But that one we may have just trying to clear after we start it and see if it stays off. I've got 2 on the HVAC system. Temperature control feedback circuit open. All right, I'm going to say as far as this engine is concerned, and I give this a clean bill of health, and I am confident that we can start it without problem. Let's see what happens. Whoo-wee. It's making some weird exhaust smells, like old fuel. Fuel does degrade over time. Let's go walk around this truck, see what we have. Take a look at the exhaust. It's definitely exhaust smoke. Whiff of it, it definitely smells like exhaust. It's not a real heavy smoke. Let's do a systems check. Those are on. Those are on. Aside from the lenses being cloudy, the headlights are working. These could use a good buff. We have a damaged mirror, but nothing's cracked on the housing. The glass is still good. Just watching the engine run. Nothing seems to be wobbling. Everything is wobbling around. I'm going to check the battery voltage again. The reason for that is to test the alternator. Now the engine is still running, but it is a brand new battery, so it'll probably run for a while, even if the alternator is bad. So we're just going to check the voltage for the engine running, which should be putting around 14 volts. We have 13.86. Settle that. That's good. That tells me that the alternator is sending power to the battery. That is working. I can definitely tell that the brake fluid is low. Here's the max line right there. That's really low. Below minimum. That's why that code's on. So when I see low brake fluid like that, first thing I'm going to do is check the brakes themselves. These are rusty. I don't know if you can see in there. Look at that. Those are nasty. Now that the engine's running, we're going to check the live data on the engine control module. I have 120, almost 122,000 miles on this truck. So the things that I'm going to want to look for with that mileage is ignition. It did fire up pretty well. Now I'm going to put the scanner back over here. I'm going to go to the engine control module. There's no faults, which is good. I'm going to look at the live data. Let's go to misfire, see if there's any misfires detected. Nothing currently, nothing on the history, so that's good. 0 misfires. That is very good. I have oil pressure. These trucks are pretty notorious for those sensors going bad. Okay, now that we have established that the engine does run well, time to top off some fluids. I do have some brake fluid. Do that, some .3. Always says to clean the reservoir cap before you open it. The reason for that is that contaminations don't compress. This is a hydraulic system, and so contaminants like dirt, water, air don't compress. Put it at the max. And I'm going to start it again. I'm going to pump the brakes. Well, all the brake lights are off now. Traction control light, everything. I think there might still be some air in the system, so it probably wouldn't be a bad idea to bleed the brakes. But this thing needs rotors and pads. I'm going to check the steering. Well, it does seem low. It is making a little bit of a whine. Yeah, that's low. Well, it doesn't look like I have power steering fluid. Let's steer pretty easily. I'm gonna let it get the temperature. What I'm looking for now is just any kind of seepage around the valve covers, around the timing cover, taking the motor mounts. Really pretty good actually. And on this side, looks very clean actually. That's good. Really looks pretty good. I'm gonna look underneath the truck, see if there's anything noteworthy. This truck has HID fog lights. Let's see if they work. They do, surprisingly. Very blue. Nothing real noteworthy. Ball joints, I don't see any cracks in. I don't see, there might be some very minor cracks in the control arm bushings. The struts don't appear to be leaking. So we're looking pretty good. I'm gonna give it a bounce and see if it makes any funny noises. That's pretty good. Let's go to the back. First, license plate lights work. Look underneath. Well, aside from some rust, looks pretty good. I'm not seeing cracks in the bushings. The axle stoppers, if that's even what they're called, but that's would make sense to me, are kind of cracked, but that's really not that important. It is if you're bottoming out frequently, but hopefully you're not. Let's see if this makes noise. Suspension noise. That's good. I've cycled the transmission back and forth. I'm gonna check the transmission fluid. There's the transmission fluid. It's not in the cross hatches, but it may not be hot yet. If you look at the color, of course, you know, there's dirt. Transmission fluid is also a very good cleaner, so when you wipe it up and down the dipstick, it's gonna take all the dirt off of it. But if you look at the actual fluid color, it's a little less than red, but it really isn't bad. So far, all I really think it needs is an oil change, a brake service, pads and rotor, maybe a tune-up if it hasn't had one, though it seems to be running pretty well. I'm hearing a click from the starter solenoid when I try to start it. I'm going to try to start it a couple more times and see if it keeps doing it. Well, what do you know? Twice in a row and it didn't even click. So could have just been a sticky relay due to it sitting for so long. The solenoid itself could have been sticking a little bit. We'll go on a drive and see how she does. All right, you get to see my face now. Aren't you happy? I'm now in the truck. I'm gonna take it for a drive. We're gonna do a quick drive, just kind of get an idea of what this thing's doing. I mentioned that there's a rattling sound left side front. Ooh-wee! This thing rattles. Right, because the tires are all messed up. I hope this thing doesn't have a blowout. Let's see what you got. Oh God, that is a vibration. Oh, I have my little scanner so I can see if the emissions relearn themselves. God, this is slightly terrifying. So there's 4 modules there. Holy cow. So I don't think I need to take this for that far of a drive. I'm going to take my next exit. I'm going to turn around so I can go back. I've got the codes back. So what I need to do, work them up an estimate for brake pads and rotors, oil change, bleed the brakes. He needs to get some tires. I'll look up this code, and I'm thinking that it is going to be the evap canister or the vent valve, which is down back by the tank. Holy cow, this thing has got some vibrations. Look, I'm going to suggest for this vibration that he get new tires and have them balanced and see if the rattling goes away. I heard it. Bing! I heard it. definitely hear it. Ding, ding, ling. Okay, I found the cause of the rattle. Sway bar link got no bushing on it. This side, it looks to be missing one too. So we need a set of sway bar links. I don't think there's anything here that'd be causing the vibration except that. It's definitely going to cause us a vibration. So I don't think it's suspension related. I think it's definitely tire related. I'm glad I turned around. This one's not as bad, but it's still pretty worn. Still some pad life left. I was able to see it with my bore scope. Given the condition of these rotors, if I'm going to replace rotors, I'm going to replace pads as well. Got a little bit of cracking on the lower ball joint bushing and on the tie rod. I think that's pretty good under here. I don't know if you can see in the video, but gotta love alarm systems. I might leave that in, I might edit that out. Let me get my 10mm. It always says clean the cap and remove the always says to clean the reservoir cap before you open it. And so contaminants like dirt, water. I am now in the trunk. I'm in the trunk. I'm now in the truck. Come off first and go on last. Morning.